Everybody, welcome. Let's make sure we get this thing going live here. It looks like we got a good stream. Hey, thanks for being here today. I'm Phil Jose, and this is Reading Smoke with Phil Jose. And it's been a while since we've done this live, so thanks for being here. If you want to check in on the chat or whatever, I got it down here. I'll try to address your questions if you receive the notification. I know it's been, I don't know, I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks since we've done a live session. So, and that's just because I've been out on the road teaching. Let me get the video going here. I have a list of classes on the show notes. If you want to see me, I got several that are in the works. New York, Florida, there's a couple up in Washington, Oregon, and working on some things in maybe Minnesota, etc. So already scheduling for 2023, and I think I'm almost done booking 2022. That's the ones that I got in the works. Another 4 or 5 classes this year, and that'll probably do it. So what we're watching here, Frank Wisnowski, you notice here, Frank, thanks for letting me use the video. Email Frank, he was super generous. But as we're floating in here, I'm going to go back. What's going on here is Frank is he's at another fire, and we might go back and take a look at that, but now he's flying in. So he was at a fire, and he rolls over to this other one. These are both multiple arms fires in the city. But look at we want to look at the smoke. It's been going for a little while here, right? So one of the things that, it depends on the wind. I don't know how fast it's going. That might be a little bit of a delayed notification. But as you're rolling in here, you may or may not even see the column because it's getting blown sideways. But you know, relatively thin, but it just keeps getting thicker, and we're going to pull in here. It's a commercial building fire, and it's pretty well, I mean, as you can see already, right, it's pretty well going even before the fire department arrives. And Frank's here early with his drone. So we're looking at here, right, is we're already seeing the mounted fixtures, right? So these air conditioning units, these air handling units, those sorts of things, right? Those are mounted fixtures. They're a live load on the roof, and you want to be concerned about those. Notice they're just getting started here, but pretty significant fire. And the first thing that stands out to me when I look at this is the velocity is the highest in the center. But the two things that raise my concern immediately are this, a pretty significant, it's not high volume, right? It's not a lot of volume of smoke, but pretty significant velocity and density coming out of this front section. And it's going to go, it's brown, like it's most of the time it's brown, and just the same in the back when this smoke clears on occasion, and you get a chance to see it. The same is going on back here. And what that's telling us right away, this pressure from the mounted fixtures and these two indications of smoke here, even though these two are relatively low volume, is that the fire definitely has access to the overhead already, right? So on these commercial building fires, really any fire, but particularly the commercial building fires with a flat roof and these live loads that they have on top, you have to be very cognizant that that fire can be above you. And you can have a pretty significant fire working above you, and when you're in the space, it feels like it can feel warm, but you're not seeing any smoke around you. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about with this fire too is if you haven't explored the idea of limited access structures, right? So this is a limited access structure. There's only doors in the front and the back. Enclosed structures, I wrote it down, but I'm forgetting right now. There's some studies on enclosed structure fires and how often they lead to firefighter fatalities. And one of the red flags is high heat, low visibility. And that's what you're going to have in these situations. If the fire is above you, not in the space that you're in, you're going to be warm, but you're not going to see any fire on you. That's going to be an indicator that the fire is in the overhead. And in fact, when you enter these, you're going to always want to check the overhead. These indicators like this here and this one back here are just reinforcing that that's something we want to, as a basic process at commercial building fires, is being aware of the overhead. And they're going to take care of that here. And this fire is going to continue to grow, and the volume here is really pretty high. So we look at volume as a measure of scope and scale of the problem. Clearly there's a significant problem in this building. right? You combine volume with velocity, right, which is what we have here. Significant working fire somewhere in towards the center of the structure, which means that you're going to have to get pretty in depth or have pretty significant reach to start having a big impact on it. Now they're having to force entry as well. Don't know what day of the week it is. It looks like it's either early morning or late night. But this will be one of those things you want to think about, like commercial building. If we have to force entry, and the risk factors is all part of the decision making. They're going to start out with offensive attack, but they will go defensive here. Excuse me. Woo. Anyway, we're sorry about that. And if you, Gazoon tight in the chat, nice, thanks. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is just watch this thing develop, and there's a couple of points over time, and I'm not gonna go the full, I think this 29 minutes or something like that. We're not gonna go the full time, but when they open this up, notice that it's mostly intake, right? There's a little bit of smoke coming out the top, but that smoke's in the very top of the door, the top foot, the top couple inches. Another indicator when you open these doors, if that neutral plane settles out very, very high, then you want to be thinking about the fire being on the floor above. And that is true in residentials too, right? If the fire's on the same floor, if the fire's on the floor above, let's start there, right? It's going to be your neutral plane's going to be very high in the door. If it's on the same floor, it's going to be sort of in the middle third. And then if it's on the floor below, often the door you open will be 100% exhaust, right? So that's reading smoke at the door. We're going to continue to let this is going to continue to develop. I'm going to pop it forward just a little bit. One of the things that we want to look at here is what we can learn here that maybe we can apply. So even though they do go defensive here, what can we learn here that we can apply in a situation where there may be a little more opportunity to go in the offensive mode? But one of the things that really causes me a lot of concern is the amount of brown smoke that's coming out of here. And remember that brown, right, it's volume, velocity, density, color. And if we look at brown, that's unfinished lumber being heated, right? Being heated, it's off gassing, right? So unfinished lumber in a building like this is likely to be only in the overhead or the walls, right? That's where it's going to be. And that's what we're seeing, since we're seeing so much brown. And you notice even this vent here is starting to switch over into the gray scale, right? It's in the gray scale now, and they're just getting that offensive operation going. Okay, so I'm going to move it forward. This is around the area, I think, yeah, we're right around the area where it looks like they switched to a defensive posture. Notice that even with the fire attack they had going, they're not making progress, right? And so if you're thinking you're in that mode, but you're not making progress, maybe time to rethink it. Lots of brown smoke now coming out of the door. This is turbulent. So now, I remember before we had the smoke, the neutral plane was very high. There was a little bit of smoke coming out of the store, but not very much. Now we have a lot of turbulent, thick brown and some in the gray scale coming out all the way down this door. We're going to see these windows break along here, and now we're starting to see actual flame coming in this center section, right? So it's just copious volumes of turbulent brown. Okay, and look at that, the windows break there. Now this is another area where I think we can really learn something. Look how quickly this fire establishes a very defined neutral plane, intake at the bottom, exhaust up high, right? So this is a big wide open area, and this neutral plane is just really, really set, right? I mean, it's really clearly defined. If these firefighters are standing in here, if they're looking in there, they might actually be able to see pretty far into the space to see maybe there's a wall back there, maybe there's a door, what's going on in this space, right? But a clearly defined neutral plane, and we're going to see really just the volumes and the velocity and the density, right? They're just all off the charts now. As this thing starts to grow, they're going to start to get a couple of lines, maybe even like a stinger or a portable monitor. You can see them setting it up there. They're going to get some water flowing in through these windows, and it's going to have an impact. But as we're looking at the rest of this, right, the color now very quickly has changed pretty significantly through here. I mean, look at right here, and then look at just a couple of, just a minute or so forward. Just the scope and scale of the event with that additional ventilation is really significant. Okay, so as we're going through here, there's a few more things I want to point out. I'm just looking down here at some notes I have. So we're getting around about 30 seconds or so. So right in here, right, we're going to start to see flame. Look at that change, really quick change to black. And we're going to start to see flame actually working its way out through this. See right there. Now the water's going to keep it in check, but notice the velocity and density here. This flame, like that's coming from here, right? Remember, smoke is fuel. It's coming. It's working its way this direction. They're gonna keep that water flowing, which we're gonna see again. It's gonna have a pretty big impact. Now there's a little switch there in the video, right? So let me go back. I just want you to notice there's a trim here. So there's that unknown amount of time that is cut from the video here as the drone repositions, or maybe even Frank had 2 drones at this. I don't know for sure. But when you see these cuts like this, remember there's an unknown period of time that transpired. Okay, let's take stock of where we are right now. Right, they've got now 3 lines. They were just stretching this line before that break in the video, so probably a couple of minutes, maybe a minute, minute and a half, something like that. That's just my mental model working to see how long would it take to get that line in operation once they stretched it. So I'm thinking, say 2 minutes, right? So there's 2 minutes of video missing, but significant change already in that with these 3 lines working up front. Notice that the VVDC has already started to drop here, and it's been redirected to the back. Now, this is really impressive. This amount of volume velocity, like this is so much. The volume of this coming out of the back doors, I mean, look at how much smoke is coming out of here. And the velocity, its turbulence is off the charts. I mean, it's coming out of here 30, 40 feet up. It's still boiling because there's so much energy. Super thick, extra chunky is what I would call that. If you've been in my classroom sessions, you know, we talk about what extra chunky is. I think this is extra chunky. I mean, the density is just crazy. And the color, of course, is in the black scale with a little bit of brown inside there, but mostly black, right? Now, watch back here. Wherever we see density, when we see this velocity and density like this, we're going to see the fire take off there. And what we're going to see, and that's a good example for us of smoke is fuel, right? So we look back here, we can watch this thing. It's going to light off, right? We know that's going to happen, and we can just watch it now. Boom, there it goes. It lights off, right? And that's, I'm going to watch it again because what we have here is exhaust. Maybe I went a little too far. I'll get it. There we go. Here we go. It's actually exhaust gas ignition that burns its way back into the structure. Yeah, look at that. You know, so it's one of those things like this smoke is fuel, remember? So as this lights off, the volume here actually goes down pretty significantly as it gets consumed, right? Once it lights on fire, that fuel, smoke is fuel, the fuel is getting consumed, and so it's less. It's still a lot, right? I mean, even this right here, you've got a flame probably 40, 50 feet high, and there's still so much fuel that there's plenty of smoke left over. Now the fire extends to the back, but let me draw your eye again here. Operating up here, and now we're back down. Basically, you've got a little bit of smoke here, a lot of steam, right? So still something working here. It's still working up here, but they're having an impact. All the fire is being pushed, right? It's not being pushed, but it's being drawn, right? The path of least resistance is to go to the back. They're pulling these ladders. Now they're in the defensive mode. And obviously you'd want to start thinking about collapse zones and all that sort of stuff. Okay, but I also want to think about, look at the velocity of the flames coming out along this edge. and just being forced out of there. You start to see some sag in the roof, and we're off to the races. Now, this has got some smoke, but notice too that even right here, there's a lot of steam in here from the water that they're using, right? From the water that they're using, you're getting a lot of steam, and we're seeing now we're clearly in the defensive mode. I mean, these trees are taking a beating. Eventually that tree will catch on fire. I actually don't know if they get some water on that to prevent that from happening, but right now, based on the trees I've seen, we've done live fire where we've put smoke through the trees like this. It's probably not going to survive, or at least this half of the tree's not going to survive. And they're not going to save the building, but they are having an impact up front here. Obviously, I'd be way more concerned about the collapse potential back on these three sides than I am up front here. I think they've done a nice job with getting those lines, quickly, or not super quick, but early. Like I said, this is their second 2-alarm fire back to back, right? So getting those lines has really pretty much stopped the fire in this part of the structure. I think you definitely want to be looking at long term. You'd be looking at what's the structural stability before you take some action to go in there and overhaul it. And certainly this part here is completely lost, right? So let's go back. Just want to sort of reiterate the things when we first get here. The neutral plane is very high in the door. We have high pressure from all of the mounted fixtures and from these spaces that appear at the front and in the back, where clear indication that the fire has access to the overhead. The amount of pressure it takes to get around these mounted fixtures. Remember, all of this is supposed to be rainproof, right? So significant pressure, meaning a significant fire in the center of this structure relatively early on their arrival, right? It gets bigger, and as they're working, they end up in the defensive mode. As we go forward here, these front windows break, and a really dramatic, right? These windows break in here, really dramatic increase in the volume coming out, and then a rapid increase in the fire behavior. But as we're looking at these things, and I understand this is a defensive fire, and I've had people say to me, like, hey, you can't learn that much. Like, yeah, you can. You can learn as much as the video will teach you, and then maybe in the future you can apply it at a time when, if the fire was a little bit smaller, but in the overhead, if you have the staffing and you can get some 2.5s in there and pull the overhead and maybe push it, right? And it's difficult in here because you can't push from both sides. Maybe you can save part of it, maybe not. I'm just saying that no matter what video we're looking at, there's things that we can look at and say, hey, if I see that in the future, it's telling me something, right? Now you have to fold that into whatever incident you're on at that time, and what does that information tell you about what the fire's doing, right? What the fire's doing, what it's going to do, how long it's going to take to do that. All of that is stuff that we can learn from these videos and all the videos we take a look at. All right. So thanks to the city of Chester. If you were working that day, I'm sure it was a happy day for you. It's a lifetime experience to go to these two fires. Thanks to Frank. I was going to go back just real quick, and this is the fire. This is their first fire that he was already on. Right. So this is a significant fire that they had here. I mean, they've had a partial collapse. They're using master streams. It really. This was a significant fire, and a lot of these units, I'm sure, went from here to that other fire. So, like I said, a banner day. But thanks to Frank, thanks to the city of Chester, and thank you for being part of the Reading Smoke Nation and joining me here. I'm happy that we're doing it live again. I'll be live whenever I possibly can, but with the teaching and family and summer schedule coming up, I'll see you here every Thursday, but we'll be live when we can. But other than that, like and subscribe. If you have a good video like this one right here, somebody sent me a PM and hit me up on this video a couple weeks ago, and I was able to grab it, get a hold of Frank, and etc., and get this thing up on YouTube. I think the original person who DM'd me, they found it at Dave Statter's site, which is always a good site to go to if he wants a video to learn from. So thanks for joining me here. Always hit me up in the comments. Love hearing what you have to say. And with that, this is Reading Smoke with Phil Jose. I'm Phil Jose, and I'm out.